Next up on stage, we have a conversation with the popular writer Devdutt Patnaik, and the moderator of the session is Professor Lata Nair. So he focused on his passion full-time. He is author of 30 books and 600 columns, with bestsellers such as My Gita, Jaya, Sita, Business Sutra, and the Seven Secret series. He consults organizations on culture, diversity and leadership, and also various television channels and filmmakers on storytelling. The moderator for the session is Professor Lata Nair, faculty at St. Teresa's, also a director of Gunn Center, Study of Science Fiction, affiliated to Kansas University. On behalf of Kerala Literature Festival, we welcome you.
Good afternoon, and today's session, I have the privilege of introducing a man on a mission, Devdutt Patnaik. I should confess that I had read only one book of his, Jaya, which is about Mahabharata, if I'm right, yeah. And as a reader, there is something else which fascinated me, and that is the illustrations that this unique writer has on his books. And the question in my mind was, who does this very unique illustrations for his book? And I should tell you that it is Patnaik ji himself who does the illustrations. So I would qualify him not as a doctor, not as a writer, but as an artist, where you witness the symbiotic combination of the writer and an artist, and a man who carries with him an extraordinary stamp of humaneness. And as I was walking into the podium, I was hearing him being labeled as a mythologist, but I deconstruct that he is not a mythologist, but he is something else which the human mind or your ossified intelligence can label or classify. Welcome, Patnaik ji, to this session, and we'll begin with one of my queries which I felt as I read, and a brief introduction about his writing. I should tell you that 2017 has been so productive when academicians like us struggle for writing 1 or 2 essays. 2017 in Patnaik ji's life, you should look at the number of books that he has produced, almost 8. Yeah, 2017, and the list of books come up to 40, more than 40 books, 2,000 articles, and he is not even 50. Yeah, so this is which makes him a prolific writing. And as we read through his writings, the question that confronted me as a reader is the dual substance of SHYAM. That is, the new book is all about Krishna. And I was fascinated by the title SHYAM. You know, like the yearning so human, so superhuman of man to attain God, or more exactly to return to God and identify himself or herself with him, has always been an inscrutable mystery to me as a child, as a woman. Would you please, and I have a very revolting question in my mind, that is, do you think that you have exploited this nostalgia for God as a writer when you try to deconstruct the Hindu mythologies?
See, I explore it. I like to explore ideas and share whatever I experience with people. You can call it exploitation, you can call it whatever. I feel India has a very vast tradition and we are not well informed about it. For various reasons, one of them being it is a very complex subject. It is very, very complex and people try to simplify it. I also try to simplify it, but I know, I try to make people aware that while I make things simple, it is very complex. So for example, when you say Krishna, Krishna in Manipur is very different from Krishna in Assam. Krishna in Assam is very different from Krishna in Bengal. Krishna in Bengal is very different from Krishna in Udupi. Krishna in Udupi is very different from the Guruvayur temple. Krishna in Maharashtra is very different. But yet we use the word Krishna in the singular. And therefore I try to understand that what is the common, what is singular and what is plural. And that is what you do, because I didn't see any books in the market who were trying to explain it to the next generation. You know, these nuanced understanding of the Bhagavad, of Krishna, of what does avatar mean. People would use the words very casually. How Krishna means black, SHYAM means black, but the sound of the word SHYAM is far more emotional than Krishna, which is far more, has a different sound to it. So these are the things that I wanted to bring to the table so that people understand, the many layers of ideas which are just in this one character called Krishna. So that's the whole idea. So I explore, I share my explorations, my discoveries, I illustrate what I see, what I feel, and then I turn it into a book and make it available to the masses. And I'm glad that people have enjoyed this, because it's not easy to get the kind of information I put together. They're available in academic books, in PhD books, but it's not available to the common man.
One thing that fascinates you as a reader is the clarity and lucidity with which he has connected the various tales of Krishna, and he has connected it with the regional beliefs and myths that go with the tale of Krishna. Would you like to chart this journey for us, that there is a lot of research that has gone into writing this book. For example, can you share with us the story of Ulupi's son, whom Arjuna married?
Arjuna doesn't marry Ulupi's son. So
No. Arjuna's
so I was like,
marries
this story I haven't heard.
Yeah.
So, no, so this comes from North Tamil Nadu. The story of Aravan, who is the son of Ulupi and Arjun. And so this is, we don't realize Mahabharata has many folk narratives, local variations of the story. So there are local variations in Odisha, there are local variations in Karnataka, there are local variations in Kerala, in Tamil Nadu. The Terukuttu performances especially have a very different storytelling, very complex storytelling. Bundelkhand has a very different storytelling. So the Aravan story comes from the Pondicherry area, the North Arcot area, and the story goes that the Pandavas were told that the only way to win the war is if they sacrifice someone with all the good qualities. They should have 36 good qualities. And Krishna, Arjun and Aravan had these qualities, but since Krishna and Arjun were indispensable, they asked Aravan whether he's willing to sacrifice himself. And he agreed to sacrifice himself on condition that he gets married. He says, I want someone to cry for me when I die. And no woman wanted to marry him because they said, why would we marry a man who is going to die at night, that same day? So Krishna takes the form of Mohini and marries him for the night and weeps and wails like a widow in the next day. So this story is told by the Aravanis of North Arcot, which is the transgender tradition of Tamil Nadu. So you suddenly see how sexuality is presented through storytelling and through an ancient tradition. These are stories which I'd like to tell people. So, there are similar stories in Maharashtra, for example. In Maharashtra, there's some story of Jambul Akhyan. Jambul is the fruit which makes your mouth purple. And in Maharashtra, there's a folk theatre where Draupadi one day plucks a fruit from a jambul, which was really reserved for a rishi. And the rishi gets very angry and he says, you put the food back up there because my tap for 12 years I have not eaten and my aim was after 12 years I'll eat this fruit, but now you've plucked it and therefore you've destroyed it. You bring it back there and so that I can complete my vow. And he said, how can I bring a plucked fruit back to a tree? So she says, tell the truth. Tell a secret that you have in your heart, and if you tell the truth, then the fruit will go back and stick to the tree. And Draupadi has to tell a truth which is very uncomfortable, and she has to tell the truth. Now this is a Maharashtra story, where she says that while I have 5 husbands and I love them all, I also love Karna. So I love Karna, and immediately the fruit goes and joins itself. And now it's a folk theatre, so it's a very shocking story in a village environment. Oh my God, you have Draupadi saying that she really liked someone else. She already had 5 husbands. So in the play, at the end of the play, everybody in the audience is given a jambul to eat. And say, if your mouth doesn't turn purple, it means you have no secrets in your life. But if you have a secret in your life, then your mouth will turn purple. So then that's how they connect morality, ethics, values, Mahabharata, theatre, everything is connected. But only the people in Jambul Akhyan is known only in Maharashtra. The story of Aravan is known only in Tamil Nadu. So when you combine these two, there is a lot of story in Kerala about the black magic being used by the Kauravas against the Pandavas. So this whole section of mandalas being created and black magic being done, which is not found in other parts of India. So I like to tell people these various stories, because people don't realize how vast and how diverse our culture is. And that's the purpose of these books. The purpose of these books is to make people open their minds, see things the way nobody has seen it before. Amar Chitra Katha narrows your vision. I personally felt it would, now I realize it, it's narrowed your vision because it only give you one answer, told you one form, one look, which is what television also sometimes does. It gives you one form. But a book allows you to imagine and explore newer territories.
So what is the amazing tale that has been with you? The number of tales that you have confronted, you have heard, you have listed. Will you share with us the most amazing tale that you have ever come across?
So the most amazing, every tale is amazing in its own way, but where Krishna is concerned, the story which is, I think, very thought-provoking and sort of makes you think a lot is, at the end of the Mahabharata war, we are told that the Pandavas have won, the Kauravas have been defeated, and then there is an argument in the Pandava camp. Bhima and Arjun start arguing who is the greatest warrior in the world. Is Bhima greater than Arjun, or is Arjun greater than Bhima? So they go to Krishna and say, what do you think? And Krishna says, my opinion will be biased because I was sitting on the chariot with Arjun. I didn't see Bhima fighting in the battlefield. So why don't you go to the head on top of the hill? So, next to Kurukshetra, there is a mountain. On top of the mountain, there's a tree. On top of the tree, there is a head, a decapitated head of a warrior. And from that vantage point, he could see the entire battlefield. So he would be in a better position to tell whether Bhima is greater or Arjun is greater. So Bhima and Arjun go there and say, who do you think is greater? Is it Bhima or Arjuna? And the talking head says, who is Bhima, who is Arjuna? I didn't see them in the battle. So he says, what do you mean? We are the Pandavas who defeated the Kauravas. So then the head says, But who are the Pandavas, who are the Kauravas? I didn't see any Pandava or Kaurava in Kurukshetra. From where I stand, all I could see is foolish kings killing each other and their blood falling on earth and the earth goddess drinking their blood. So Bhadrakali has spread her tongue on Kurukshetra to drink the blood of foolish kings. And this war, and the head is being cut by the Sudarshan Chakra of Krishna. Now this, when you hear this story and you go to any temple in India, you will see in images of gods, on top of it there is a arch, and on top of the arch there is always a head. Or if you go to Tamil Nadu or some of the bigger temples, on top of the Gopuram there is always a big head looking at you with big eyes. And it is telling you that there is another perspective to life. You see the world in a particular level, but there's someone else who sees the world from another level. And these ideas give us viewpoints, what is called darshan. The way I see the world and the way you see the world is very different. The way a third party sees the world is very different. And therefore we should not be arrogant that our view of the world is correct. And we have to realize that there are shortcomings of our way of seeing. But we can only see our way, right? We can only see our way. So we should not get too attached to our way and accept the fact that the world is full of diverse views, different people, and they see, you may not mean something, but they will see it totally differently. Somebody else will not even recognize the Pandava and Kaurava war. So I think this was for me the most amazing story, because it is also found in architecture and art. And they're trying to continuously tell people, and this is a very unique thing in India. And you find this in the Jain traditions also, the Anekantavad, different ways of looking at the world, which is very unique to our culture. And I think somewhere along the line, this is being forgotten, that we have a culture which celebrates different ways of looking at the world, diversity, plurality. I think that's what these stories tell. So my mythology taught me this.
So how do you, now what I infer is like, there is a set view against singularity that is being thrust on people. So how do you look at, why do you think that plurality, do you think that plurality of views or plurality of beliefs are better, or do you have something else for the audience to say about the plurality that you see in the dailiness of life?
See, nature is diverse. Imagine if nature was full of a single kind of tree, or all the animals looked alike and behaved alike. Nature is diverse, plants are diverse, animals are diverse, stars are diverse, human beings are diverse. No two human beings are the same. I am not you, you are not me. So when you talk about singularity, in many ways we are stifling the natural diversity of the world. It is convenient. Singularity is convenient. If you think just like me, then it is so much more convenient. I don't have to do anything. We all think the same way. It has practical benefits. So culture typically is uncomfortable with diversity. But the struggle between singularity and plurality will always be there. Even in a family, different people think differently. But to create a tribe, you need a single way of thinking. So there is always tension between singularity and plurality. Indian thought favors plurality. Western thought favors singularity. Chinese thought favors singularity. Singularity prefers homogeneity, no heterogeneity. Everybody has to be homogeneous because it's efficient. But Indian thought, that's why India is so messy and chaotic, because we are heterogeneous. Everybody is different, everybody thinks differently, we dress differently, we eat differently, we talk differently. A US dollar bill has only one language, English. The Indian rupee note has 17 languages. And it's a little difference, and I tell people, now you please tell me which is better. Is the American model better, one language? People from all over the world go to America, but they have to accept one language. India is made up of people from all over the world, but we have 17 languages only on there. There are many more dialects. There are 700 dialects. Which language are we willing to sacrifice for singularity? So we should be very careful of the singular word. Somewhere you have to sacrifice things. So who is going to sacrifice for singularity is the question we have to ask ourselves.
So what is, in the book that you have said, the Abrahami's, the tradition or the thought process, You have made a very strong viewpoint about that actually encroaching and deconstructing, our philosophy, our thought processes. And do you think that this is going to destabilize the binaries of good and bad, or, kind and cruel? There are so many binaries to which, especially when you put the gender lens on many of our epics, myths especially. Have you felt that this is actually, instead of destabilizing the binaries, it is stabilizing the binaries?
See, binaries by themselves are not stable. Nowhere in the world a binary is ever stable. It's always fluctuating. There's a dialectic, there is a transformation. Nature does not allow anything to be stagnant and fixed, right? Now, let's try to understand, when I say the Abrahamic faiths, the idea of God is judge. God is judge. God gives a set of rules. You have to follow the rules. If you follow the rules, you go to heaven. Don't follow the rules, you go to hell. This concept emerged in the Middle East, in the Near East, and spread around the world. Ideas which emerged in the subcontinent of India were different. God is not a judge. There is no concept of commandments. There are many heavens, there are many hells, and there is no one life. There are many lives. So it's a different way of looking at the world. It is not better or worse. It is different ways of looking at the world. And we have to ask ourselves, is there one way to look at the world? And that is the question that we have to ask ourselves. Is there one way to be a man? Is there one way to be a woman? And that's the question that we have to fundamentally ask ourselves. Not everybody sees God as a judge. Buddhism does not even have the concept of God. Jainism does not have the concept of God. Where there is the concept of karma is there is no concept of judgment day, Qayamat. But yet billions of people in the world believe in Qayamat and believe in the judgment day. That is valid. And there are many people who don't believe it. Now, how do you have a dialogue between these two people? How will they live together in the same? That is where civilization comes from. The moment we say one is better than the other, then we have gone into a combative zone. We have not gone into a zone of civilization. We have gone into a zone of conquest. Civilization is about dialogue and empathy and allowing others to exist. Combat is about conquest and empires. It's not civilization. So we have to ask ourselves these fundamental questions. In the colonial times, of course, the Abrahamic faith dominated. We are no longer in colonial times. Today we question the idea of God. We question the idea of karma. We question everything. We challenge. But that doesn't mean there is one answer. The people who question keep forgetting that there are multiple answers, which means even their answer is inadequate and incomplete. And that is something that we can't handle. Our ego cannot handle the fact that my answer is also incomplete and inadequate.
So what is your, in the book on myth and mithya, that you have made a statement that all of us like to live in the world of truth. So how would you respond to that concept? That is, how would you connect it for the audience, like myth and truth on one side? There is subjective truth and there is objective truth. And how will you,
the way you see the world, your parents don't see the world the same way. Now, which is true? Your way of looking at the world or your parents' way of looking at the world? Just ask this fundamental question. Why are there arguments in a family? Why do brothers and sisters fight? Because everybody looks at the world differently. That's subjective truth. The same applies to cultures. Cultures also look at the world very differently. And we have to recognize the fact that everybody looks at the world differently. Now then we'll say that objective truth, the measurable truth. Now you can't measure anger. So how can when somebody says I'm angry, somebody else will say he's stupid. So I'm angry over something. But anger is emotional and emotions can't be measured. Rage can't be measured. Love can't be measured. So objective truth is often restricted to measurement. You're a literature professor. Words like discourse, which is so popular now, post-structuralism, none of them are scientific concepts. From a scientific point of view, these are just academic concepts. They will not be considered scientific. And yet in the humanities, Discourse is a very powerful word. But the scientists will say these are all imaginary concepts. There is no truth to it. So for a scientist, discourse is fantasy. For a humanities professor, discourse is what creates revolutions. So what is true? So myth and mithya says that Indian way of looking at truth is different from the Western way of looking at truth. The Western way of truth is qualitative. True, false. True, false. Binary. Indian model is also binary, but it is quantitative. Mithya is limited truth. So my truth is limited. Your truth is also limited. But Satya is limitless. It's infinite. Nobody has access to infinity. You and I have access to limited truth. Some things we'll have a Venn diagram. Something's common, something's uncommon. So that's why I think Shankaracharya says, Jagata Mithya, Brahma Satyam. Because only that creature can see infinity. You and I can't see infinity. So we'll always be trapped in Mithya. We'll always be trapped in limited truth. Now this is a very different approach to knowledge. So the Indian epistemology functions differently. There is, in fact, in Indian epistemology, there is no concept of ontology. At a very deep level, they'll say everything is the mind, everything is the mind. Buddhism also will say everything is the mind. So that is the Advaita, the whole thing is the mind. So there is no ontological idea. There is nothing outside the mind. But Western scholars will completely disagree. Scientists will disagree. Measurement, people who believe in measurement will disagree. So it's a different way of looking at the world.
Now you have been, very, very, I would hate to use that word liberal, but in this particular book itself, SHYAM, what I felt is you have dealt with sexuality of women in a very gentle, very liberated way. How would you like to share the experiences of Radha, Krishna concept, and Draupadi and Shyama, the friendship that they had?
I think we are conservative when we are insecure. So insecure people don't like to change the world. It scares them because they want to hold on to systems and processes. And, when we are scared of change, it is normal. It is very normal to be scared of change. And therefore, conservative behavior comes from fear. But when we speak of God, we speak about love. And love is the opposite of fear. Which means God cannot be conservative. Even in the Abrahamic traditions, the tension is between law and love. So is God law or is God love? Law is about control. Law is about being conservative. Law is about holding on to things and not changing. Love is about allowing things to flow. Movement. So Radha, Krishna, the Gopikas, the Rasa Leela, the milk is flowing and flowing and flowing all the time. So milk turns into butter, butter turns into curds, curds turns into ghee. It is transforming and changing and nourishing the world. But the moment you grip things, so when you go to the Mahabharata, it is all about law, control, property, dispute. This is my property, boundaries. And you have blood. No more milk stops. So the world of Yashoda and Radha comes to an end. Milk stops to flow. Blood starts to run. Because you become conservative. Ye mera hai. This is mine. This is not yours. And the fight starts. And when fight starts, things go wrong. And that's what, when I'm talking about, I'm not talking about women's sexuality. I'm talking about sexuality in general. I think we are scared of pleasure. We are scared of happiness. We have defined pleasure in violent terms. We only understand sexuality through abuse and rape and predatorial behavior. That is the way the discourse is in the public forum. Whenever you talk about pleasure, we only talk in negative terms. Disease, abuse, violation. There is no complementary conversation on joy, happiness, exploration, intimacy, affection, love. They are both together. But you notice the discourse is very anti-sexuality. Although they claim to be talking about sexuality, they are uncomfortable with it, both at the left and the right. Different forms of sex is seen through violent lens, through diseased lens. It's not seen through joy and pleasure, which is what SHYAM is about. Rasa Leela, the singing, the dancing, the sensuality, the Shringara Bhav, the Madhurya Bhav. These are emotions which we don't want to cultivate. The only place where it is cultivated in a very crude way is in theatre, in Bollywood songs, and where it borders on the vulgar. We are not comfortable with boys, girls, girls, just loving each other. And love, you know, in the Valmiki Ramayana, there is a very famous sentence. When Bharat is coming back to Ayodhya, he says the orchards outside the city have no lovers. Something is wrong. That means something has gone wrong in Ayodhya because there are no lovers outside in the orchards of the city. Now imagine today saying that sentence. We see lovers on the road and we'll say, look at these shameless boys and girls. So we have reduced pleasure to shame, to guilt, rather because it comes from fear. We are terrified of pleasure. We are terrified of pleasure because we think we will lose control. And therefore we become conservative.
And there is a beautiful 4 lines that he always would love to recite. I think we should hear him reciting it for you.
The
last 4 lines, what I find has got a very, very relevant meaning for all your writings.
So this is the book, this is the lines I wrote in my first book, and it has been with me in all my books.
Yes, yeah.
Of course, there are variations. If you look at study them carefully, you'll realize that I have also evolved over time. So it says, within infinite myths lies an eternal truth. Who sees it all? Varuna has 1,000 eyes, Indra 100, you and I only 2.
Yeah, and I think that I should confess that to decode the man sitting next to me is not a very easy task, because his reading, his extensive reading and research and the passion with which he writes is very difficult to translate or transcreate into words. Words are purveyors of truth and untruth, as he said, and this has been a challenging job for me to be in conversation with Devadatta Patnaik, but I would say that it has opened my eyes as a reader, as a woman, and I'm sure that he would definitely contribute more, and I am sure that all of us agree to the point that people who have created history are amazing storytellers, whether it is Buddha, whether it is Jesus Christ, or whether it is our own Patnaik ji. So God bless, and hope to hear more from him. And now the stage is open for questions. We are waiting. He would answer definitely your queries and questions. Go ahead.
Hello, sir.
Yes, that is a question.
Yeah.
I am a big fan of yours. I am a big fan of yours.
Thank you.
My question is regarding karma. Even one single action can have consequences stretching to eternity. Also, it overlaps with consequences of actions of other people as well, along with the difference in emotions. Hence, it becomes difficult to determine whose is whose and how much for whom. So, will Chitragupta be able to keep the account with all these complexities? I have one more question. When you said Shiva, who had outgrown hunger in the mountain top, is physiological or psychological, or both? Is it physiological or psychological? When you said Shiva, who had outgrown hunger in the mountain top, is it physiological or psychological or both? Thank you.
So the second question is easy, both. And the first question, whenever people say the question, what is karma? They will give me a line, as you sow, so you reap. But this is a line from the Bible. When Krishna talks about karma, he says, don't think of the results, which means nothing is predictable. So we are talking about karma, but we are saying, I cannot predict the results. So don't think of the results, is what he's continuously saying. But yet we talk about pap and punya as if we can imagine it's almost like a mathematical input-output sheet. But Krishna is saying, no, it's not as simple as that. Because there are many actions you have done that you are not aware of that has had really terrible or positive consequences. Your conscious mind knows only so much. Your unconscious mind doesn't know the many things you have done to hurt people. Same concept. Because I don't desire the fruit, which means I've outgrown hunger, both psychological hunger and physical hunger. It doesn't matter what fruit I get because I have outgrown the hunger. So that's how the concept of karma and detachment are all related to each other. Yeah?
Good evening, sir. I'm a huge follower of your work. Sir, I have a question and it has a follow-up. Sir, a doctor, you are from medical background. How come a doctor sitting somewhere has some means like imaginations and then he starts writing about the ancient India and myths of India? You could say myths, but we don't believe in myths. I don't believe that it's myths, but people say that it's myths. So myths of India about gods. Being a doctor. And then second question, sir. Sir, what you write about all shades of the gods, the people who we call heroes in our ancient India. So, sir, can people come with the terms of that all shades? Like, sir, like for example, Shiva remains naked with erect palace. That means he has eternal detachment and eternal bliss. But people can't keep it with that way. So they made the Lord of the Universe change his ethics from being Digambar to being Bagambar so that people can be comfortable talking about Shiva. So, sir, can people come with that terms what you write about all shades of gods?
It's a very confusing question. I'm sorry. Like I'm trying to figure out what you asked. In the beginning, what did you ask? See, Chaiwala can become Prime Minister, no? So why doctor can't be mythologist?
No, sir. I mean inspiration.
Such prejudice. Just because I studied medicine, I'm not allowed to talk about
No, sir.
God.
Not at all, sir. Where does the inspiration comes from?
Brahmand. The same place where the desire to be Prime Minister comes. So it's my karma maybe. Nah? It's maybe my karma to do it. I don't know. It comes from within. And I do it. So you try to do something and then the karma tells you should go this way. You try to go in one direction, you keep getting obstacles, you keep saying, and then you're nudged and forced to go in another direction. As far as the Digambar and all, see, these are ideas. You must not take them literally. These are ideas and frameworks which are trying to explain complicated ideas. So when you show Bodhisattva with many arms, nobody believes there is a man with many arms unless you are really, really silly and stupid. These are ideas and concepts which are being explained, and because they are difficult concepts, they are not nature. They are going beyond nature, trying to explain ideas of what makes life life. And how do you communicate that? Words are not enough. You need imagery. That's why I illustrate. So if I want to explain to people a concept visually, I will have ideas like Digambara. We will have ideas like Urdhvalinga. Now, if you can't handle a naked man and you have a problem with an erect penis, that's your problem, not the artist's problem. The artist is trying to communicate complicated ideas, hoping you will get it. You know, and that is very difficult. These visuals are extremely complicated because the ideas are complicated. Mandalas, chakras, these are complicated ideas. How do you explain resurrection through art? How do you explain Qayamat through art? Words are different. Art, if I tell you, okay, I'll give you a piece of pencil and paper, now you explain without talking the concept of Qayamat. How will you do it? So that is what art is all about. That's what illustrations are about, and it's complicated. And in some cultures, art was not allowed. They said, no, you use only words. Don't use art. In some cultures, they said, don't use words, use only art. So when you read the Vedas are Shruti. You have to listen to it. Then the Agama traditions are Darshan. Look at it. So looking, hearing, that using different techniques to communicate ideas. We should not trivialize them. Leave that to the politicians. Yeah?
Right, sir. Thank you very much.
Hello, sir. It was a delight listening to you.
Thank you.
So my question is, you mentioned about Bharat coming back after the Vanvas. I mean, not Bharat, was it Lakshmi? So coming back and saying that in the periphery,
Yeah.
there are no love. So when we were looking at love in such a divine full, perspective, and now we have put shame and guilt. What changed? Why did this change happen?
See, at one level, it was the rise of monastic orders. So the monastic orders in India have always rejected pleasure. So the monastic orders across India, whether it's Buddhism, whether it's Jainism, whether it's Hinduism, the mathas, they were very uncomfortable with the Devadasi parampara. They were very uncomfortable with the dancing, singing culture. They were extremely uncomfortable. All the arts in India comes from the nattas and the nattis. So when Islam came into India, initially they were uncomfortable, but gradually in the later phases, they became the patrons of the arts and they celebrated the arts culture. So when you read Manu Pillai's Rebel Sultans, he talks of the second phase of Islam. The first phase was very, didn't like these kind of pleasure, sensuality, but the second phase, they adopted this. And the Tawaif culture, the Lucknow culture, the Gharanas emerged, the Hindustani classical emerged. Pleasure became again a part of culture. In colonial times, this was seen as being effeminate. Pleasure, sensuality was seen as effeminate. It was a military time. To be a man was to be a warrior, not a dancer or a singer. Hindu gods were dancing and singing, and we were also warriors. So Krishna will play the flute, he will do the Ras Leela, but he'll also be in Kurukshetra. This idea the West cannot understand. They said military. That is how colonialism came, and Indians started believing in it. So gradually we rejected the feminine side of India. We wiped out the Devadasi traditions. We wiped out the women who controlled the arts. The arts were controlled by women. If you look at temples and everything, the mridanga is played by women, the singing is done by women. Women were wiped out. Men took over, upper caste took over. You see them reconstructing India the last 300 years. We became ashamed of ourselves. And now we are ashamed of being feminine. India has always been a feminine cult where Krishna does Shringar. Nowhere else in the world you have a god who does Shringar. And you have to show him a mirror to show that are you good looking today? You know. So where do you get Shringar, Madhurya Bhav? With Shiva does Tandav, he does tell storytelling. So we are today, you will see this across India, we are rejecting the feminine side of India completely. Therefore the sensual side of India. So it starts with the monastic tradition and ends with colonialism. So that's the arc. And even today, you will see the monastic orders in India very uncomfortable with women, as we know.
If I can ask one more question, a quick one. Okay.
Hi. First, I would like to applaud you for introducing India's younger generation to Sanatan Dharma.
Thank you.
You know, it has been such a wonderful change in whole society.
Thank you.
When I talk to my mother, she knows about Hinduism, which lacks Sanatan Dharma. She will not know the knowledge of Vedas. She will read Ramcharitmanas, but they will not understand what was written and what was the marma of Valmiki Ramayana. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
On the other hand, when I speak to my son, he knows much more. He will be having much in-depth, he will speak about Radha and Krishna in the different perspective. And I think you're one of the torch bearer who brought this culture to India. Okay, now the second thing, I'm a big fan of my Gita because I feel Gita is one of the most strongest scripture, you know. Every time you read, you get the different perspective. But how you have simplified it is beautiful. There was the first time when I had this concept of Sanchit Karma. And this Sanchit Karma and Pa, the relationship, can you explain it slightly more?
See, we should not go into the details of these things because we are continuously trying to control our future. Really, it comes down to that. it is coming down to how do I control my future? What should I do now so that the future can be controlled? But you know, many a times, you know, you can do actions without controlling it. We keep saying that, you know, be aware, be aware, be aware. But you can make a mistake without realizing it. Click a button and an email goes to the wrong person. Click a button and a WhatsApp message goes to the wrong person, and relationships get destroyed. So, you can't predict life. All these conversations on karma, sanchit karma, pap, punya is basically coming from our insecurity because we can't control the future. And all these conversations are because we want to control our future. But we can't. And that is what the Gita ultimately is saying. That listen, you cannot predict the future, which is what modern management is about, is predict the future, predict the future. Nobody predicted Donald Trump. And he came. And now you have to deal with it. And we don't know what he's going to do. We don't know what the future has in store for us. You know, the elections, everybody is saying this is going to happen, this is going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen. So, you know, education, you may get the top rank in the class, doesn't mean you'll get the best job. You may get the best job in life, but you may not get the best spouse. Your children may turn out to be, so there is no guarantee in life. And that's what the Gita is trying to deal with. So I think when we talk about karma, you know, and only the Gurujis seem to know the trick. And that is how we make money, right? When I tell you, I can make your future predictable. And that is where business is. Business is if I can tell you that if you wear this rock, good things will happen to you. If you go to that temple, good things will happen to you. We are continuously trying to control our future. But unfortunately, life is full of surprises. And we have to just accept it. Yeah?
Thank you so much.
Hello, sir. My name is Madhurima, and I've been reading your books since 5 years now. And I just want to thank you first because I may not have read the original text, but it feels very proud to actually know the ideas that are in there. And it has been always because of you. And one of the books that has been my favorite is the Book of Ram. And when I read it some 5 years back, there was this question that came to my mind, that the controversial decision of Lord Ram sending his wife to Vanvas, you had put it in the chapter Ayodhya's king and not Sita's husband. So was it something that just happened, or was it a deliberate yet subtle attempt to reiterate the idea that it was a king's decision and not a husband's?
See, Ramayana is a story of a king. It is not the story of a husband. And that's the thing we have to keep reminding ourselves. As a husband, Ram does not remarry. That's the only point that is a very strong point. And it's a strong point because in Hindu mythology, most men have many wives. Ram is the only one who's called Ekam Patni Vrata. And he rejects her. So which is very ironical, paradoxical, significant. That is not something to be taken lightly. They are very clearly saying, this is the only character who is called Ekam Patni Vrata. And he's the only character who is abandoning his wife for no reason except gossip. So it's such an absurd story that it is an important story. It is an important story because it is talking about kingship. And how kingship demands decision making which may not be based on justice, but may be based on reputation. Reputation versus justice is a very complex topic. Around the world, if you talk to people in how much is reputation important and how much is justice important. And it's a very, very, very complicated topic. It sounds simple when you're sitting on the desk, but on a day-to-day life, talk to people in senior positions. And they will tell you about how institutions protect their reputation over justice. Now you could read the newspapers. Around the world, institutions are shaken up because reputation mattered more than justice. And today, justice is demanding that reputation doesn't matter, justice matters. This is what Ramayana is talking about. Is reputation important or is justice important? And a king takes a call on the point of reputation. Now, what is right, what is wrong is up to you. You decide. A story is not there to tell you what is right and wrong. A story is there to make you think. It is not there to prescribe. Indian texts never prescribe. They make you observe, they make you reflect, but ultimately you have to take your decision because karma is yours, not Ram's. Yeah?
Just one more request, sir.
Let Anna. Yeah, this side. There's a gentleman there. There's a gentleman.
Namaskar, Patnaik ji. Your illustrations in your books, you've drawn them on your own.
Yes.
Would like to ask you, how did you start drawing and this unique style of illustrations? They're beautiful.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So I'd like to know how you've reached this form of illustration.
See, I'm trained in medicine, and in science, when you're writing anatomy, physiology papers and all that, unlike in literature where you have to write full sentences, you don't write full sentences, you just write bullet points. They don't care. And if you draw a diagram and immediately mark the points, that's good enough to win, get good scores. So diagrams become important. And I realized then that diagrams talk to us very powerfully. Visuals talk to us very differently from a text, a word. And I wanted my books to talk to people in different ways, not just through words, but also through lines and images. Because, we are so used to the Bollywood version of mythology or to the Amar Chitrakatha version of costumes that we are not able to imagine different ways of how a chariot will look, how a woman will dress, jewelry, body language, why Ravan's head, how can it look? So looking at Shiva in different ways, when you look at art forms across India, there are so many different ways in which you show the gods. And I realized you need a little visual appeal. So it really came from my science background. This desire to juxtapose images with text. I cannot just write a text. I need imagery. Because I think then the communication is far more sophisticated. And it really touches you. So in ancient India, people couldn't read. So the temples were used and art forms were used. Paintings and murals were used to explain ideas. I'm using both. So, and I like to, and it's very fast. All my illustrations take not more than 2-3 minutes. I draw it very, very fast.
How did you get that style of
I have from childhood I've been illustrating. So I have a very good sense of proportion. So that is something very natural to me, that my sense of proportion, I don't need a scale. If it's a complex diagram, I use sometimes pencils, but otherwise it's just a sketch pen and I immediately start drawing. I don't use pencil. I mean, I use pencil only for complex images. But for basic images, it's just line, and I'm also impatient and in a hurry and I want to finish. So like all the SHYAM illustrations, which are about 200, would have been finished in 4 days. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think we can take one more question.
There's a hand there.
There is a hand there.
Have you seen the movie Sita Sings the Blues, which is banned in India?
Yes, I did.
What do you think of it?
I think it was very irreverent. There is a visual over there which shows Ram kicking a pregnant Sita. And I think no Indian would accept that. That kind of visualization, it's creative expression, but it's like the last temptation of Christ. The film and the book were also banned in India. Satanic verses was banned in India. India loves to ban things that disturb.
Sir, I have one last question. So I'm here. If there isn't a timely renaissance which happened within a religion, should the people seek an external intervention as it has happened in the case of Sabrimala? It's not anything to do with your writing, but I just wanted to know your opinion or your take on what has happened with Sabrimala.
See, change happens in messy ways. So I don't know whether it's right or wrong, but no change happens nicely. In the whole world, any change happens in a very messy and dirty way. And across the world, empires have been built in messy ways. Changes, the Gregorian calendar that you use today, which we use so casually, was imposed on across Europe through violence, through really foul violence that we don't even realize. Just read the history of the Gregorian calendar. Millions of people were killed so as to follow and institute the Julian calendar, the Gregorian calendar. So we don't realize that any transformation in the world is a violent, messy process. It's never clean. There's no right and wrong. Things change. We don't know in which direction it will go. There'll always be people who will say change is bad, and there'll be always people who will say change is good. This is just one more of those incidents that will happen. 50 years later, nobody will even remember it.
And we conclude with one last question. Which is the funniest mythological tale that you have ever heard and the most unbelievable?
So, it is really in folk narratives. When you read folk tales, see all these very classical, nowadays especially, these kind of lobbies don't think gods can be funny. But traditionally in India, gods were very funny. So, in Odisha, for example, there are a lot of folk songs where, for example, there is a story where Shiva comes to visit Vaikunt, and they keep Nandi outside, and Shiva and Parvati enter Vaikunt. Nandi sees that, because in Kailas there is nothing to eat, but in Vaikunt, Lakshmi has grown green vegetables in her garden. So he goes and eats all the green vegetables, and he is very happy. And then Lakshmi comes and says, oh my God, this Nandi Bell, this useless thing has destroyed my thing, and she just starts screaming at Shiva, and there is a whole Ninda Stuti of Shiva and Parvati. You are like this, you are like this, you are like this, and everybody is having a good laugh because, it's a very village thing. And then Parvati gets angry, and then she starts screaming about Vishnu and says, oh, Vishnu has these problems, these problems, these problems, these problems. And, he has a roving eye, and he loves cows and this thing, and he becomes Mohini, and what kind of husband is this who wears a sari? So, this kind of a banter which is there, I heard it in folk songs, and it's there in YouTube. Some of my researchers have put it together. Nowadays, you can't say on anything like that. You will have like them some fatwa or some rule, or somebody wants to kill your head or break your bones. Because humor demands you to have a sense of security. Insecure people can't crack jokes. So nowadays, we don't crack jokes.
So with that, we come to the end of such a fine session, and I hope and pray that we will be waiting to see more books from you, and stay blessed as you are, as an artist, as a writer. God bless.
Kerala Literature Festival thank Dr. Devdutt Patnaik and Professor Letha for sharing their thoughts and ideas with us. I request Rohit, convener of Food Committee, here left, to hand over a token of love and appreciation to both. Thank you. We have one of the most awaited discussion next by Dr. Shashi Tharoor, and the moderator of this session is M.T. Harshad. The theme of the session is Makers of Modern India, Nehru, the Discovery of India.